Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 282. Happy Friday. Hope you guys have had a great week. Today we're going to get into the confirmation hearings of Trump's intelligence community nominees. The ODNI nominee, Tulsi Gabbard. Her confirmation hearing was yesterday, but they were also having the confirmation hearing for Kash Patel, Trump's nominee for FBI director, in a different hearing, and they were having him at the same time. It was really interesting watching. I was flipping back and forth, and they're asking the same questions to Kash Patel that they're asking Tulsi Gabbard. There was a lot of crossover. Tulsi Gabbard was in front of the Intelligence Committee, the Senate Intelligence Committee, and Kash Patel was in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee. And the way this works, if you don't know, they do their hearings in front of these committees, and then the committees vote to bring their nominations out of committee, and then the entire Senate votes on their confirmation. So Tulsi Gabbard, again, was in front of the Intelligence Committee yesterday. She did a great job. She is nominated to run the Office of Director of National Intelligence. And I've explained to you that the Office of Director of National Intelligence is a office that was created post 9/11. There was no Office of Director of National Intelligence prior to the September 2001 attacks. And this office was created, they told us, because they didn't connect the dots, that the intelligence that the FBI had, that the Moussaoui arrest, the FBI had Zacharias Moussaoui that was arrested in Minneapolis. He had all the plans for the attack on him. Those dots weren't connected. You had the Phoenix memo, FBI director in Phoenix, Arizona, who noticed Middle Eastern students at a flight school learning to fly. They didn't care to learn how to land. Sent that information to Washington, to the FBI headquarters. Nothing was done. We have the CIA giving President Bush and his cabinet a briefing a month before the September 11 attacks, warning them that the terrorists were in the country. The title of the presidential daily brief, which was leaked and then declassified, was Bin Laden determined to strike in the United States. And in that document, they warned that terrorists were in the country and they were preparing to hijack planes. But the dots were not connected. None of those dots were connected. So we had to create a new government office, the Office of Director of National Intelligence, and Tulsi Gabbard is being nominated for that position. Very, very important position. And a lot of people are worried about Tulsi Gabbard being in charge of the Director of National Intelligence, being the Director of National Intelligence. And I've explained why. We're going to get more into that today. Again, Kash Patel was in front of the Judiciary Committee, and he's being nominated for the FBI. And the FBI is one of the FBI's over here. Can't see the FBI here. The FBI is one of the intelligence agencies that is under the Director of National Intelligence. So, like I said, there was a lot of crossover in the questions that were asked to Kash Patel, particularly about the FISA 702 warrants, and we're going to get into that today. I want to start today by talking about the Bill of Rights and what the Bill of Rights are. So if you don't know, the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. The Constitution was composed in 1787. And then after they created the 7 articles of the Constitution and created the United States, the framework for the United States government, they started to send this new document, these 7 articles, to the different former colonies, the different commonwealths, the 13 commonwealths at that time. And they started to send this to be ratified. And it needed to be ratified by these commonwealths before the new nation could be created. And as they send this document and people start reading it and they say, okay, I see Article 1. I see that that's the legislative branch. I see Article 2. That is the executive branch, and it shows, the functions of the executive branch, the functions of the legislative branch. And then you get into Article 3. It shows the functions of the judicial branch. We understand all of that. People started asking, well, what about the people's rights? What about our rights as citizens of this new nation? We need something that clearly outlines our rights as citizens in this new nation. So they started asking for this Bill of Rights, for these amendments to be included into the Constitution. And I was explaining to you when we did the series of podcasts over the Thanksgiving holiday, and I was explaining about the 2 different founding colonies in the first 2 founding colonies here in the United States, the Jamestown colony, how it was founded, the Plymouth colony, who founded the Plymouth colony, but they were all English. And I was explaining to you that the English colonies were different from the other colonies that were also colonizing the New World, the Dutch, the Prussians, the Spanish, the French. They were all here. They were all here colonizing the New World. But the English were different because the English, first of all, were Protestant. They had separated from the Catholic Church. And then the English were different because the English had already started to, because they had embraced Protestantism, they had already started to get away from divine right. And what divine right is the kings of these different kingdoms, they ruled by divine right, and they ruled with absolute power, the European monarchs. But in England, they started to put limits on the power of the king, starting with Magna Carta, but definitely as they got into the English Revolution in the 18th century, that they started to put restrictions on the monarch there in England, beginning with James, and that is what these people who came to the New World, they brought that same mindset about maintaining people's rights and restricting the rights of the monarch. So that's where they got the idea from for this Bill of Rights. They had already been accustomed to that because that is what happened in England, that they forced James's son Charles during the English Revolution to sign the Petition of Right. So this is the Petition of Right. Let's just read a little bit of this. The Petition of Right, passed on 7 June 1628, is an English constitutional document setting out specific individual protections against the state, reportedly of equal value to the Magna Carta and then the English Bill of Rights in 1689. So they didn't have anything like this in Spain, the Spanish colonies. They didn't have anything like this in France, the French colonies. This was unique to the English colonies and the English people, this concept of the Bill of Rights, the rights for the people, Magna Carta. So that's why they started to ask for the Bill of Rights immediately after the Constitution was created in Philadelphia in 1787. So that's where the Bill of Rights come from. Let's read a little bit about the Bill of Rights. The United States Bill of Rights comprises the first 10 amendments of the United States Constitution proposed following the often bitter 1787 and 1788 debate over ratification of the Constitution, and written to address objections raised by the Anti-Federalists. The Bill of Rights amendments add to the Constitution specific guarantees of personal freedoms and rights, clear limitations on the government's power in judicial and other proceedings, and explicit declarations that all powers not specifically granted to the federal government by the Constitution are reserved to the states and the people. It's very important. This is very important because after the American Revolution and they had won their independence from King George and the King of England and won their independence, people were very skeptical about creating a new federal government. People were very skeptical about this new government because they didn't want a new monarch. They didn't want to create a new power that could levy taxes on them and have onerous authority over them. So this is why the Bill of Rights was so important. And again, the Bill of Rights goes back to what was happening in England with Magna Carta, the Petition of Rights, and the English Revolution. The concepts codified in these amendments are built upon those in earlier documents, especially the Virginia Declaration of Rights, as well as the Northwest Ordinance, the English Bill of Rights, and Magna Carta, and also the Petition of Rights. I would include the Petition of Rights here from the English Revolution. So what are these amendments? Let's read a couple of them. We're not going to get to all of them. We're just going to get to a couple of them here. So the first one, we all know the First Amendment. Congress should make no laws respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise there or abridging the freedom of speech, of the press, or the right of people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievance. That's one. That's number one. The Bill of Rights started with 12, and then they ended up with 10. Just so you know that. You can look into this if you don't know this history. The Second Amendment. This one's controversial. This is the one that's really controversial. Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Seems pretty clear to me, but this one's caused a lot of controversy over the years. This one doesn't really have any relevance today, but back in the 18th century, it did have relevance because the British Army, when they were over here fighting in the Revolution, they were taking people's farms and their houses and forcing people to feed and quarter their soldiers. So this amendment pertains to this, to what was going on there in the 18th century. And it says no soldier in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a matter to be prescribed by law, that we don't have to let. So I see a lot of relationship between the Third Amendment And the Fourth Amendment here, which is the important amendment, the amendment that we want to focus on for today, the Fourth Amendment. We're going to get into that. But basically what the Third Amendment is saying is that the owner of a home, the owner of a farm, the owner of a property, that they own their property, and you can't force me to let the soldiers into my home or members of the state into my home. I have privacy in my home, and you can't force me to allow military from the state and individuals from the state. You can't force a homeowner to quarter and to have these people have privacy in my home. It's basically privacy. And so now it gets into the Fourth Amendment, which is explicit about this privacy that you have in your home or in your persons. And the Fourth Amendment, this is the important amendment to what we're going to talk about today. Fourth Amendment says that the right of the people to be secure in their persons, in their houses, their papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated. My privacy shall not be violated. And people today say, well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't care if they're violating my privacy. No, it doesn't matter if you're not doing anything wrong or right. They don't have any right to violate your privacy. It doesn't matter if you're doing anything, you don't think you're doing anything wrong or whatever. They don't have the right to violate your privacy, your person, your house, your papers, and effects against unreasonable, that's important, unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall be issued, and it shall issue, but upon probable cause. You can't get a warrant unless you have a probable cause. There has to be something that gives you the probable cause, the idea that I'm doing something wrong. There has to be some type of evidence that you have to go and get a warrant that I've done something wrong to allow for these searches, for these seizures, for the spying. A lot of this is about spying, especially today. We're going to get into it. And no warrant shall be issued, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things seized. All that has to be in the warrant. So if you have probable cause that I have a bazooka in my house, so you got to go to the judge. You got to show your probable cause that we believe that or let's just say an AK-47, which is illegal. Can't have an automatic AK-47. Or M16. Let's say M16. Can't have, it's a military weapon, M16. Can't have that in your house. That's illegal. So you have the probable cause that I have an M16 in my house. You got to go to the judge. You have to take an oath or affirmation to the judge. You have to swear on the evidence that you have, the probable cause that I have this M16 in my house. And you have to say where the M16 is, particularly describing the place to be searched. You have to say where the M16 is, and then you can get the warrant, and then you can come in and seize. I mean, this is the Fourth Amendment. These are the rights that the people demanded before the ratification of the Constitution. Very important. So in the hearings, in both hearings, the hearing with Kash Patel in front of the Judiciary Committee, the hearing with Tulsi Gabbard in front of the Intelligence Committee, the FISA warrant was a very important part of those hearings. It was pretty much all of the questions dealt with either Edward Snowden, which Edward Snowden was a whistleblower who blew the whistle and told the American people about what the federal government was doing in violating the Fourth Amendment. So they asked Tulsi Gabbard a lot about Edward Snowden, but it all pertained back to the FISA and the 702. The FISA warrant, it was created in 1978 during the Nixon administration, but it was strengthened. It was strengthened after 9/11. Let's read a little bit of this. FISA enacted in response to revelations of widespread privacy violations by the federal government under President Nixon. I think this was after the Church Committee, because the Church Committee happened under the Nixon administration, and then they created the FISA. It requires federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies to obtain authorization in accordance with the Fourth Amendment for gathering foreign intelligence information between foreign powers and agents of foreign powers suspected of espionage or terrorism. The law established the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court to oversee requests. So there's a special court with judges that are supposed to oversee these FISA requests when you go to get the warrant, as the Fourth Amendment requires. Although FISA was initially limited to government use for electronic surveillance, subsequent amendments have broadened the law to regulate other intelligence gathering methods, including physical searches, PIN registers, and trap and trace devices. Everything's being, that's what we learned from Edward Snowden, is that they're just grabbing everything. They're grabbing everything. This is fully Orwellian spying and surveillance that we're living under. It's Orwellian. There's no other word to describe it than Orwellian. And read 1984. If you haven't read 1984, this is what we mean by Orwellian. And compelling the production of certain types of business records. Okay, so this last paragraph here is important. FISA has been repeatedly amended since the September 11 attack. So the September 11 attacks strengthened the FISA after September 11. They had to change it so the government would have more control and leeway what they could do with the 702. So FISA has been repeatedly amended since the September 11 attacks, with several added provisions garnering political and public controversy due to privacy concerns, due to the Fourth Amendment concerns and the violation of the Fourth Amendment. The Patriot Act. Let's talk about the Patriot Act. So the Patriot Act is legislation that came about, again, after the September 11 attacks. The U.S. Act, commonly known as Patriot Act, was a landmark act in the United States Congress signed by President George Bush. The formal name of the statute is Uniting Strengthening America by Providing Appropriate Tools Required to Intercept and Obstruct Terrorism. The Act of 2001, and is commonly used. Short name is a contrived acronym. That's where you get the Patriot Act from, U.S. Patriot Act. That is embedded in the name and set forth the statute. The Patriot Act was enacted following the September 11 attacks. But it wasn't only following the September 11 attacks. If you don't remember what happened after September, in the week after September, somebody started mailing anthrax around first they started mailing it around to the news agencies. The very first people that got some anthrax was a print publication in Florida. And then they started sending it to ABC, NBC in New York. Now, why are they sending the anthrax to these news agencies? Because they wanted the news to report on this being a second wave attack after 9/11. Someone's sending anthrax around with this letter. The letter said, read, death to America, death to Israel, Allah is great. They're making it seem like with this letter that This is a Muslim extremist that could be tied back to the 9/11 attacks. And it turns out that this anthrax was being sent around. It was an American weapon. And when it first started to be sent around, people were speculating, well, where'd this anthrax coming from? Is it Russian? Is it coming from Iran? Who's sending this anthrax around? And people started speculating that it was coming from Iraq. There's even a video of John McCain on the David Letterman show saying that we believe that this anthrax is coming from Iraq. It wasn't coming from Iraq. It was coming from right here in the United States. The anthrax was the Ames strand that was created in Ames, Iowa. And this anthrax was being sent again to the news agencies first. But then they started to send this anthrax to members of Congress, members of the Senate, Democrats that were against the passing of the Patriot Act, because the Patriot Act was being debated in the Senate, and there were mostly Democrats. It's very important. It was mostly Democrats that were concerned with the violations of civil liberties, the civil liberties that are outlined in the Bill of Rights. They were concerned with that this Patriot Act was violating the civil liberties and people's Fourth Amendment rights. So it was being held up in the Senate. They didn't want to vote for it because it violated people's civil rights. So it was mostly Democrats. So the Democrats that were against it, they got some anthrax in their mail. Some American anthrax. Tom Daschle was the Senate Majority Leader. This Patriot Act had to go through the Judiciary Committee before it could be voted on. The head of the Judiciary Committee was Patrick Leahy. He got some anthrax. Tom Daschle got some anthrax. They had to shut down the Senate because of these anthrax attacks. And then once they clear out the Senate and make sure that it's safe, when the Senate comes back into session, the very first thing that they're debating is the Patriot Act, and they're all ready to pass it now because we've just been attacked by this anthrax. There was only one senator who, I want to read this part about the anthrax attack, because Russ Feingold, this guy, Democrat of Wisconsin, is the only one to vote against the Patriot Act. And Russ Feingold is a old school Democrat. When Democrats cared about civil liberties, when the Democrats who created the ACLU and all of that. This guy, I don't even know that Russ Feingold could be a Democrat today in today's Democratic Party. I'm serious, because he's not a neoliberal. He is a classical liberal. Russ Feingold was, and he was concerned about the violation of civil liberties in the Patriot Act. But what you got to understand here, okay? Letters containing anthrax spores were mailed to several news media offices and to senators. Tom Daschle, who was the Senate Majority Leader, like I just told you, Patrick Leahy, who was the chair of the Judiciary Committee, killing 5 people and infecting 17 others. Capitol police officers and staffers working for Russ Feingold were exposed as well. So Russ Feingold's staffers and his people were exposed to this anthrax, and Russ did not care. He didn't care that his people were exposed to this, and that this was a frightening attack, maybe even a second wave attack from Muslim extremists, which we know that's not true today. This is American anthrax. Came from here in America, and it was mailed to members of Senate. So the Senate ends up passing the Patriot Act, but if you notice here, it says it was 98-1, and the one person to vote against it was Democrat Russ Feingold. Again, Russ Feingold was concerned about the violation of civil liberties. Okay, and so and Acts amended codification right here. Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. So the strengthening of the FISA after 9/11 was part of the Patriot Act. All right. We're getting there. I'm just laying some groundwork for you guys. So Edward Snowden, again, was, he was a topic of conversation, and a lot of the questions that were asked to Tulsi Gabbard were for her to condemn, Edward Snowden, to call him a traitor. And if you don't know what happened, Edward Snowden, was a member of the NSA. He had joined the military post 9/11, and then he found out what the military and what the Bush administration was doing, and violating people's First or Fourth Amendment rights, their rights to privacy. So he blew the whistle. He was a whistleblower. He's not a traitor. He's a whistleblower. He blew the whistle and he showed how the federal government was abusing their authority and spying on everyone. Edward Joseph Snowden is an American, Russian former NSA intelligence contractor whistleblower who leaked classified documents revealing the existence of global surveillance programs. He became a naturalized Russian citizen in 2022. In 2013, while working as a government contractor, Snowden leaked highly classified information from the NSA. He was indicted for espionage. His disclosure revealed numerous global surveillance programs run by the NSA and Five Eyes. This is very important, Five Eyes, because Five Eyes it's 5 countries, English-speaking countries: Australia, New Zealand, Canada, England, and the United States make up the Five Eyes. You got to understand the Five Eyes because the Fourth Amendment says that the United States government can't spy on its citizens without a warrant. But the New Zealand government, the Fourth Amendment doesn't have any power over the New Zealand government in spying on us, or the Australian government in spying on us, or the Canadian government in spying on us. So the way Five Eyes works is because the United States government is restricted in what they can do as far as violating our Fourth Amendment and searches and seizures. But these other English-speaking countries, Five Eyes Network, they're able to spy on us, and then they trade the information. We spy on their citizens, they spy on us, and then the United States and these Five Eyes countries, they trade the information that they get from spying on each other's citizens. So that's how Five Eyes works. Revealed numerous global surveillance programs, many run by the NSA and Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance with the cooperation of the telecommunications companies. So that's another thing that Edward Snowden revealed, is that your telecommunications companies, AT&T, Verizon, all of them, they were in cahoots with the government and helping them spy on you. And European governments and prompted a cultural discussion about national security and individual privacy. So that's Snowden. All right, so we're going to get into Tulsi Gabbard's opening statement, because she dropped some bombs in the opening statement, in her opening statement. But before we listen to Tulsi Gabbard, let's listen to what Chuck Schumer told Rachel Maddow. And this is in the beginning of Trump's first term, when they were trying to push the Russiagate narrative and blame Trump of being a Russian agent, and that he, in cahoots with the Russians, stole the 2016 election from Hillary Clinton. And at this time, nobody knows at this time, but Trump is under criminal investigation. The Crossfire Hurricane investigation is being run in the FBI. They're spying on him. They've gotten FISA warrants on a member of his campaign, Carter Page, and they're spying on the entire campaign. The people who they didn't have a warrant on, those people, they gather their information, but those people are supposed to be what they call masked. That you mask the individual that is that you don't have a warrant on. If you don't have a warrant or probable cause on this individual, they have to be masked. But then these intelligence officials, they can go in and they can unmask people. They can unmask Donald Trump or Trump Jr. So they're retrieving all this information. The intelligence community under the Obama administration in the last months of 2016, and even in the first couple of months of the Trump administration in 2017, they continue the investigation and continue spying until there is a special counsel, the Robert Mueller special counsel is appointed, and then that lasts for 2 years. In this interview, this is the intelligence community that is telling Trump that Russia did all this stuff. Trump doesn't believe them. He's saying, no, I don't believe my intelligence community. And people are freaking out. He doesn't believe his own intelligence community. He doesn't believe the intelligence community that lied and told us that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. The intelligence community that's run by John Brennan and told us that that Christopher Steele's report was a real intelligence report. These liars in the intelligence community, oh my God, he doesn't believe them. And then this is what Chuck Schumer famously says. So this lets you know that this Democrat right here, this Chuck Schumer, he's not the same type of Democrat as someone like Russ Feingold, who was a classical liberal. Chuck Schumer is a neoliberal, and Chuck Schumer and the Democrats that now are defending and not only Democrats, the Republicans too. We're going to get into some of these Republicans too that are defending the intelligence agency. They're defending the intelligence agencies against the American people. And this that Chuck Schumer says to Rachel Maddow in this interview is explosive. But let's just remind ourselves what he says.
But he's taking these shots, this antagonism, this taunting to the intelligence community.
You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you. So even for a practical, supposedly hard-nosed businessman, he's being really dumb to do.
He's the president of the United States. He says that you take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways of Sunday of getting back at you. That leads you to believe that the intelligence community is over the president of the United States, that the intelligence community has authority over the president of the United States. This is what Chuck Schumer is saying here. All right, let's listen to Tulsi Gabbard's opening statement.
I'm honored and grateful to President Trump for his trust and confidence in nominating me to serve our country as the Director of National Intelligence at a time when trust in the intelligence community, unfortunately, is at an all-time low.
It's at a low.
Chuck Schumer admitted a few years ago, quote, "You take on the intelligence community, they have 6 ways from Sunday at getting back at you." For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution.
Absolutely.
The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence.
Total fabrication.
This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of al-Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran. Here are just a few other examples. The American people elected Donald Trump as their president not once but twice, and yet the FBI and intelligence agencies were politicized by his opponents to undermine his presidency and falsely portray him as a puppet of Putin. Title I of FISA was used illegally to obtain a warrant to spy on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page, using a Clinton campaign-funded false dossier as their so-called evidence. Biden campaign advisor Tony Blinken was the impetus for the 51 former senior intelligence officials' letter dismissing Hunter Biden's laptop as disinformation, specifically to help Biden win the election.
She's going scorched earth. Scorched earth.
James Clapper lied to this committee in 2013, denying the existence of programs that facilitated the mass collection of millions of Americans' phone and internet records, yet was never held accountable. Under John Brennan's leadership, the CIA abused its power to spy on Congress, to dodge oversight, lied about doing it until he was caught, and yet has never been held responsible. Under Biden, the FBI abused its power for political reasons to try to surveil Catholics who attend traditional Latin Mass, labeling them as quote-unquote radical traditionalist Catholics. Personally, just 24 hours after I criticized Kamala Harris and her nomination, I was placed on a secret domestic terror watch list called Quiet Skies. Sadly, there are more examples. The bottom line is this must end. President Trump's re-election is a clear mandate from the American people to break this cycle of failure, end the weaponization and politicization of the intelligence community.
Absolutely.
And begin to restore trust in those who've been charged with the critical task of securing our nation. If confirmed as DNI, I will do my very best to fulfill this mandate and bring leadership to the intelligence community with a laser-like focus on our essential mission, ensuring the safety, security, and freedom of the American people. As the President's principal intelligence advisor, I'll begin by leading by example, checking my own personal views at the door, and committing to delivering intelligence that is collected, analyzed, and reported without bias, prejudice, or political influence.
Look at these guys. Look at these guys. I swear. I mean, they look like corpses. This is very important what she says about the intelligence being collected. This is the process. You collect the intelligence, then the intelligence has to be analyzed, okay? That's the process. You don't take this raw intelligence that you collected and just start sending it to policymakers. The intelligence has to be analyzed, and that's what she says here, that she's committed to that. There's a reason why she says that. We're going to get into it.
Intelligence advisor. I'll begin by leading by example, checking my own personal views at the door, and committing to delivering intelligence that is collected, analyzed, and reported without bias.
Collected, analyzed, and reported without bias. That the intelligence community is supposed to give intelligence to policymakers. The intelligence community doesn't make policy. You have to understand that, people. The intelligence community, the CIA, the FBI, they do not make policy. They're not in charge of making policy. These guys, these clowns, the legislative branch are in charge of making policy. The executive branch is in charge of policy. But the intelligence community is not in charge of policy. The intelligence community is only supposed to provide intelligence to the executive branch, to the legislative branch, so they can make informed and policy decisions. And the policy and the intelligence that is gathered needs to be collected, has to be analyzed and reported without bias to the policymakers. That's what she's committing to. There's a reason why. I'm going to show you.
By example, checking my own personal views at the door and committing to delivering intelligence that is collected, analyzed, and reported without bias, prejudice, or political influence. I enlisted in the Army because of the horrific terrorist attack on September 11th and volunteered to deploy to Iraq in 2005, where I served in a medical unit. After nearly 22 years in uniform with 3 combat deployments to the Middle East and Africa, I'm now a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, where I serve as a battalion commander of soldiers in Oklahoma, Missouri, and Arkansas. I served in Congress for 8 years on the Homeland Security, Foreign Affairs, and Armed Services committees. And it's my experience in the military and in the halls of Congress that have given me a deep understanding of the complex challenges that our nation faces, in both roles engaging with world leaders, in both roles being privy to highly classified intelligence. So I know firsthand how essential accurate, unbiased, and timely intelligence is to the President, to Congress, and to our warfighters. I also know the heavy cost of intelligence failures and abuses. Senator Collins, you led the creation of ODNI specifically to address those intelligence failures of 9/11 and Iraq's so-called WMDs.
I love how she says so-called, Iraq's so-called WMDs, because there were no WMDs. They lied about the WMDs, so-called WMDs.
Senator Collins, you led the creation of ODNI specifically to address those intelligence failures of 9/11 and Iraq's so-called WMDs. The need for the ODNI under strong leadership still exists today. If confirmed, I'll bring my experience and fresh eyes to leading the intelligence community. And my day one priorities will be to assess the global threat environment identify where gaps in our intelligence exist, integrate intelligence elements, increase information sharing, and ensure that unbiased, apolitical, objective collection and analysis to support the president and policymakers' decision-making occur. I'll work to end the politicization of the intelligence community and ensure there is a clear mission focus in the IC on its core mission of this unbiased, apolitical collection and analysis of intelligence to secure our nation. I'll work to rebuild trust through transparency and accountability. This is a national security imperative.
She's right. She's right. So she did a great job. I absolutely believe that she should be confirmed. And if she's not confirmed, don't give up. Just go ahead and wait for recess and appoint her in a recess appointment. But Tulsi Gabbard has to be the DNI. She has to be the DNI for us. I mean, all the talk about draining the swamp and all that stuff, you don't get that unless Tulsi Gabbard becomes the next DNI. And so I think she did great. So let's talk about this clown. This is Texas Senator John Cornyn. Now, John Cornyn has come out and he says that he will vote to confirm Tulsi Gabbard, but he's really concerned with the 702 and with the FISA warrants. So I'm going to show you this because, like I said, it's not just Democrats, like classical Democrats and old Democrats like Russ Feingold. They would stand up for civil liberties. They did. Now, the Democrats' party's changed a lot. You're going to see a lot of Democrats that are going to be defending the intelligence community, violating our Fourth Amendment rights and all this stuff. But it's also Republicans as well. John Cornyn is one of those Bush type of Republicans, again, from Texas. And he's really concerned with the 702. Now, you got to understand. So there's two different committees that are going on at the same time. The Judiciary Committee is questioning Trump's nominee for director of FBI, Kash Patel. And then the Intelligence Committee is questioning Tulsi Gabbard for the ODNI position. John Cornyn is on both committees. So what you're going to see here is John Cornyn asking about grilling Tulsi Gabbard about 702 and the FISA warrants in the Intelligence Committee. And then he runs over and then you're going to see him questioning Kash Patel on the same questions about the 702. So he's really concerned with 702. Let's listen to John Cornyn question Tulsi Gabbard first.
Do you believe that the President of the United States should get all of the lawfully collected intelligence that's available in order to inform his judgments as Commander-in-Chief?
Senator, not only is the answer a strong yes, I would say that it is the Director of National Intelligence responsibility to make sure that the President has access to all the intelligence so that he can make the best informed decisions for our country.
And you will be the one actually briefing him on a daily basis, correct?
That's correct.
And the President's daily brief, and we've heard that that is composed of about 60% of it's composed of information gleaned by collection under Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. I've heard your comments to Senator Wyden and others. You and I talked about the importance of getting dissenting views in front of the president so that we don't have groupthink, which can be very dangerous, particularly in the intelligence collection areas. And I appreciate your agreeing that presenting the policymakers, including the president, with dissenting views is very important. Are you aware that overwhelmingly the courts that have looked at a challenge to Section 702 based on the Fourth Amendment and any potential warrant requirement have overwhelmingly said that the Fourth Amendment is not implicated by search of lawfully collected intelligence?
I am aware, yes, Senator.
And do you disagree with that?
What I began to say in answer to Senator Wyden's previous question on this issue is, number one, the decision about a warrant requirement will be yours to make, not mine as the director.
No, it's not theirs to make. It's already been made. It's already been made. It's already been made. It's already been ratified as part of the Constitution. I don't care what the judges say. This is, you don't have the right to seize information unless you have probable cause. It's ridiculous. It's already been settled.
And people will be wanting to hear from you about what we should do as policymakers. Admittedly, you're not going to be a policymaker, but you certainly will inform us. And wouldn't you do agree that the courts have overwhelmingly held that a warrant is not required, correct?
Yes, Senator, I'm aware of the court rulings. What my commitment is to make sure that we uphold the Fourth Amendment rights of Americans in protecting against unlawful seizure and search. There are many different ways to do this. The devil is in the details. There are examples of how even in situations under Title I where a warrant is required to surveil a U.S. person.
Title I is different. I agree.
Correct.
I agree with you on that.
But my point, Senator, if I may just finish.
Excuse me. If that was misused in the case of Carter Page, and basically
it was
an FBI lawyer lied.
Right.
He did
to secure that warrant.
No, multiple times. They went to the court and got the FISA warrant on Carter Page reauthorized several times based on lies. Not just one time, several times, John Cornyn.
Page and basically
to spy on, they got the warrant and lied to the judge several times in an effort to spy on a presidential candidate. And they, I mean, this is just ridiculous.
But my point, Senator, if I may just finish.
Excuse me. If that was misused in the case of Carter Page, and basically an FBI lawyer lied in order to secure that warrant
several times,
which is why there are safe.
What would be necessary to be shown in order to establish probable cause to a judge in order to obtain a warrant?
Again, Senator, that's not for me to say. That would be for you all to decide and for the Attorney General to weigh in on.
Do you know?
Yeah, we're going to get
elements of probable cause.
I'm going to get into some elements of probable cause. Probably not in this podcast because we're going to have to pick this up on Monday. We're almost done, but I'm going to answer this question about probable cause.
Again, Senator, that's not for me to say. That would be for you all to decide and for the Attorney General to weigh in on.
Do you know what the elements of probable cause are and whether that's a practical and workable solution?
This is the center of the debate, the high standard of probable cause that's required to get a warrant, and why this will continue to be a conversation, again, with the Attorney General weighing in and all of you in Congress making this policy decision.
The CIA director, John Ratcliffe, said during his testimony before this committee that he believed that a warrant is not only required by law, but is actually impractical. Do you disagree with that or agree with that?
I will be in a better position to make an assessment on the practical implications of this if confirmed as DNI. My commitment remains to uphold the Constitution and Americans' Fourth Amendment rights.
Where would the warrant be sought? Would it be in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, or would it be in some other
FISA court?
My understanding is that it would be in the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court.
Are you aware of the fact the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court has held that a warrant is not required?
I am aware.
I can't stand this guy. Texas, get rid of this guy. Get rid of this guy. I don't care that he's voting to confirm Tulsi Gabbard. Texas, get rid of this guy. So John Cornyn grilling Tulsi Gabbard about 702 and FISA. And again, so this is the Intelligence Committee. He's also on the Judiciary Committee. So after grilling Tulsi Gabbard, gets up and he runs over to the Judiciary Committee and he's questioning Kash Patel, nominee for director of the FBI, on the same topic, FISA 702. Let's listen to this. And then Kash Patel did great too. We got to confirm these guys. But watch what Kash says.
So let me just ask you, you and I have talked about this a number of times, and this has come up before in a number of different contexts. But as I've always said, I think Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act is the most important law that most Americans have never heard of. Yeah. But when I was questioning my fellow Texan, John Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA.
He mentions John Ratcliffe again. You just heard him mention it too. Mention Ratcliffe when he was questioning Tulsi Gabbard. John Ratcliffe was the ODNI under Trump in Trump's first administration. He's now the director of Central Intelligence. So just, you know, who John Ratcliffe.
John Ratcliffe, who now has been confirmed as the director of the CIA, about this. We talked about some of the reforms that have been made to Section 702 over the years. This has been an ongoing conversation here in Congress. People like my colleague here, Senator Lee, and others have proposed reforms, which I think have gone a long way to help protect the privacy rights of American citizens. But let me just point out some of the improvements that have been made over the years. This is not the same 702 that was in effect during President Trump's first terms. These are a number of things that we did together on a bipartisan basis to make sure that the balance between the national security interests of the American people and the privacy and constitutional rights of American citizens were protected. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Senator, I do.
And I think Senator Tillis, with his typical outstanding graphics, has a wonderful handout which lays all of that out. But one of the things that's come up, and we've discussed this, is the idea that in order to query lawfully collected intelligence under Section 702, that somehow, if a U.S. person's name is involved, that a warrant would be required. Now, you're a lawyer who's represented defendants in as a public defender. You understand
That's the Fourth Amendment.
What probable cause
That's
is
the Fourth
required,
Amendment.
what sort of evidence is required to be produced to a judge in order to get a warrant. Do you believe a warrant requirement is a practical and workable or even a necessary?
You see how he's asking Kash? He's asking Kash the exact same questions that he asked Tulsi Gabbard.
Of 702.
If I may just give some context on that, Senator. Having a background not only utilizing FISA and 702 as a national security prosecutor, but as a civilian at JSOC and later as an intelligence official and the deputy director of national intelligence, 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%, but anyway, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past. And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens.
Do you hear what Kash Patel is saying? Kash Patel says that the 702 is only as good as the government officials that are in government that are going out and doing the surveillance and they're going out and gathering this information. That if you have crooked people in the government, like John Brennan, like James Clapper, like Sally Yates, like Peter Strzok, like James Comey, Lisa Page, if you have corrupt people in the government, like we're in the Obama government, the problem is not the 702 and the 702 restrictions, because those corrupt people are going to find ways to use the system for their advantage. They're going to find a way to bypass the 702 regulations. The problem's not 702 and it's not the law. The problem are the corrupt individuals that are in these agencies abusing it, is what Kash Patel says.
Of National Intelligence. 702 collection formulates over 45% of the presidential daily briefing that you referred to earlier.
I actually have heard it's as high as 60%, but anyway, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And the issue for me is not with FISA and 702. The issue has been those that have been in government service and abused it in the past.
Absolutely.
And so we must work with Congress to provide the protections necessary for American citizens. Dealing with these matters, including hostage rescue operations in real time, which we use FISA collection to find and save American hostages, having a warrant requirement to go through that information in real time is just not comportive with the requirement to protect American citizenry. I'm all open to working with Congress on finding a better way forward, but right now, these improvements that you've made go a long way.
Well, and Director Ratcliffe said that he did not believe that, given the context of 702 collection, whether a foreign target communicates with a U.S. person, that there'd be sufficient evidence to go to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court or any other court to demonstrate probable cause. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, just in real time, Senator, excuse me, it's almost impossible to make that function and serve the national no-fail mission.
I think you hit the nail on the head when you point out the lack of trust. Any of these tools can be abused by people who are willing to break the law or abuse these
They
tools
have been abused.
Or violate the public trust. Director Ratcliffe, again, used, I thought, a helpful analogy. I'll see if you agree with it. He said, the knives in your kitchen have a very useful and beneficial purpose, but they, too, can be misused do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yes. Not only can they be abused, they have been abused. And that's the issue. Like I said, we're going to probably pick this up, or not probably, we will pick this up on Monday because I have so much that I didn't even scratch the surface and get into in these two hearings. All right, guys, I'll see you guys on Monday. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we'll pick this up on Monday.